Okay, so today we are going to talk all about dating, our favorite topic, and we're going to talk
No.
about this. Yeah, really, right? We're going to talk about like head and heart and people who are thinkers and people who are feelers and how this works or most often does not work in dating and why it ruins relationships. And it really shouldn't, right, Sarah? Is that tell me
No.
I'm right?
You're you're 100% right. It should not. It should not.
It shouldn't ruin relationships.
No.
Listen, you're a prime example of somebody who is a thinker. When we're talking about head and heart people, we talk about thinkers and
Mhm.
feelers, and you live in your head even
Yes.
now.
Yes.
And we
Always
went
and
we went through
forever.
this whole right? We went through this whole soulmate clarity processing head heart thing, and you really struggled for a really long time, and it didn't make sense to you, and you were like wanting to date somebody who was a match for you, which we were thinking was going to be a head person, and we were like,
Right.
yeah, it's never worked, it's probably never going to work, maybe you should try a different kind. And you're like, but I won't respect them.
Wait, hold
And I
on,
was like,
hold on, hold on. Back
aha.
up. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on.
Yeah,
Hold
yeah,
on.
give
We
context.
need to back up because I didn't realize that it wasn't working. I just knew I
Right,
hadn't found my person. I knew that
right,
I was attracted to men intellectually first, and
right.
then the emotional and the physical either came or didn't come, and mostly didn't come. And at a certain point, when I met my now husband, I thought it wasn't going to work because he was intellectual. It was only once we started hanging out and started dating that you said, well, what's working for you? What you've dated until now hasn't worked for you, so maybe it's time to try something else. But I don't know that I could have done that on my own without meeting him first. So if you're listening to this, just have an open mind.
don't don't wait to meet
Don't
him
wait.
first or
Yeah,
her first before you give the opposite a try. So this really goes in both directions, right? So
right.
if you're a thinker, if you're somebody who lives in your head, you're processing, you're spinning out with your thinking, you love to talk things out either with yourself or with other people, right? Those are the thinkers, the ones that would consider themselves intellectual and bright
Mhm.
most of the time, people not in an
Yeah,
arrogant way, just in like a like
yeah, and
smart,
smart.
I like to use my head, I enjoy it,
Right,
right?
right,
Versus people who are these heart and soul people, the feelers, where they may or may not be bright on whatever scale, it's not what they value, right? They value
right.
who somebody is, they value spending time, they value feeling good when they're in your company and you're in their company, they value mm, the moment. They value just being not in their head.
Right.
And if you would say to somebody who was a feeler, well, what are you thinking? Their answer most often would be,
Nothing.
right, you got it. The answer is nothing. They would almost always tell you nothing. And Sarah, when we went through this, you were like, but what does that mean? And I was like, it means exactly what they said, right? Nothing. They're not thinking about anything. Not because they're not thinking, not because they're stupid, not because they're not bright or intelligent or any of those things. They're not
Right.
thinking because they're actually busy feeling. They're actually busy being in the moment. So if you ask them, how do you feel, right? Instead of what do you think? What do you think
Mhm.
about this? If you ask them how they feel, they probably could give you a better answer.
Right, right. And I
It's like
just want
totally
to
different.
clarify, we're not talking about logical versus emotional in terms of let's go with really stereotypical male versus female, right? The male mind is more comfortable with logic than emotion, and women are females are more emotional, that not more emotional than logical, but have an easier time expressing emotions and connecting.
Right, right,
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about day to day, moment to moment. Where are you living? Headspace
right.
versus heart space.
Right. And just like you classified, men versus women in one category, when we're talking about your experience, it was totally the opposite, right? You're
Right.
the one that lives in your head, and your husband or your fiance or the guy you were dating at the time is the one that was really living in his heart and lives
Right.
that way. Like that's
Right.
just how he
Right.
lives.
Right. Right. And still
So
decisions with him are logical, and I am much more comfortable expressing my emotions. But yes, man, it's hard. It's hard to date a head and
right.
it's hard for a head and a heart to date. Well, I think it's hard for the head to date a heart. I don't know if it's hard for the heart to date a head
Did
unless
we
they're
ever
getting a
ask him?
lot of pressure. No, we never asked him. I
That's your
think we did
homework, by the way.
it. No, I'll tell you, Aleeza, because I was
Because he
working with
doesn't think
you.
about it. We would have to ask him how he felt
Exactly.
about it.
Exactly. No, but literally, because I was working with you and I had you to guide me through the process, I knew what to say and I knew what not to say and I knew what to bring up and I knew what not to bring up. And I knew that the relationship can only progress as fast as the slowest person. And in this case, he was the slowest person because he needed to get to the point where he felt it. I knew much earlier on in my head that we were going to get married. We met each other in July. In December, I was in Israel and I saw my family there. And I was telling my cousins, just giving you a heads up, we're going to have a wedding. And he had no idea that, I was planning to get us engaged. So I'm like telling everyone that we're having this wedding and hoping he really better pull through. But
So,
yeah.
so what are some of the biggest challenges between head and heart daters, right? You're a thinker, they're a feeler. What are some of the things we see? So I know one of the things that I see is this frustration over the emotional connection, right? So either we feel something, but I don't understand why do I feel it, right? So that's something that's very frustrating. Or I'm not feeling something. One side or the other is not feeling it, right? If you're a feeler and you're dating somebody who is a thinker, then you might not be, quote, feeling it because it takes the thinker a longer time to step into their feelings for you to feel it in the relationship. So what are some other things that have come up with any of the clients that you've worked with or with any of your own personal experiences with this thinking and feeling? Is there anything else that comes to mind for you? By the way, we totally didn't prep this. So she's, like, I'm putting you totally on the spot.
Put me on the spot. It's interesting because I actually didn't have that experience. And I kind of want you to talk about that a little bit more because we had a soul connection right off the bat. And he was the first person that I dated that I really felt emotionally comfortable and safe with right off the bat, which is the only reason that I dated him, even though I was sure that I wanted someone who's super intellectual and all in their head, just like I am. So I actually didn't.
Right. So for you, the experience you had was because you were dating somebody who was a feeler and you were a thinker, you were able to feel that bond right away, which is the benefit on your side that you felt it. We don't know how much you were expressing it and how much he felt it because we don't have him on the show today. But if we had him here, I imagine that he might say like it felt okay to him. Like I think most people that are feelers, they do feel charged, like in an emotional connection when they meet people. Often they feel positive feelings from good people. So it wouldn't be unusual for him to feel something in being with somebody because normally that's what happens. If they don't feel it, the feelers won't stick around. They would move on. So I don't think it would be unusual on his side. I think what would be unusual is, well, how do I identify that that's my person? Because, hey, I felt something with a lot of different people, right? I'm a feeler. So I'm sensitive to these things. I'm aware of these things. So I think for somebody in that position, it's a little bit more difficult to identify, well, what is a soulmate connection? What is something that is really deep and really meaningful and really real compared to, well, why can't you just be like a buddy or a best friend of mine because, hey, you give good advice and I feel comfortable around you. So why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends? Why can't we make this thing work between us?
Right. Okay. I have 3 things to say. Number 1, you just reminded me, and I hope it's okay that I'm saying this. But he told me at some point during dating, he told me right away, he was like, I like you. I want to be your friend. I want to have you in my life forever. And I'm thinking the only way you're going to have me forever is if you marry me, because I'm not interested in just being friends with you. I like you too much for that. And at one point, and I think we talked about this and you guided
We
me
did.
how to have this
Yes.
conversation. But he said to me at one point, he said, you're my best friend and I want you to be my best friend forever. And I looked at him and I said, the only way I'm going to be your best friend forever is if you marry me. And he just kind of looked at me and I said, it's either that or we never talk again, you know, if it doesn't go there. And he just looked at me and I saw him processing and he didn't respond. And it took him another few months to propose. But yeah.
Right. And it wasn't, by the way, just like the way that that story comes across, it wasn't an ultimatum. It wasn't
No,
like,
no, 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 no,
oh,
no.
right. It was
Not
just
at
like,
all.
here's, it's just informational. Here's my boundaries. My boundaries are, I don't mind to be your best friend. I don't mind to be close as you want to be to me forever and ever, but we have to be married. There's no way that I'm going to find my partner, get married, and you remain my best friend. It's not a part of my boundaries and what I'm really comfortable with.
Right.
And I
wasn't even at the point where I was ready to get engaged yet. It's not like we got there exactly like you said. It was not an ultimatum. It was just, here's, like you said, information that you should know. I'm not looking for a male best friend forever.
Well, and I think depending on who you are, somebody else might have said, cool, if it doesn't work out between us, we could be best friends. I like you too. I always want you in my life. Now, just so you know, to everybody listening, if you say that to somebody, they might just opt for the friendship option because, hey, I don't have to take any risks. I don't want to risk losing you. So because I'm not willing to lose you as a friend, I'm also not willing to risk gaining you as a spouse. And so, deep. But it's really, really, really true that somebody would rather, if they really care for you deeply and they like you, which it was clear on both sides that was the case, you don't want to risk that. That's very special. And if you have two people that are willing to be friends and just be best friends and hang out and great, then they'll still go out into the world and they'll go try to find their partner when really they have an amazing, viable partner option in front of them.
Wow. I feel like that happens so much more often
all the time
than it needs to, because that makes so much sense. If I don't want to risk losing you as a friend, then it's not worth the risk of seeing if it could go somewhere else. And obviously it is worth that risk. But it's just,
I mean, by me, it's worth the risk, but you are genuinely risking the friendship. Now, you weren't risking the friendship because you didn't have a friendship outside of a relationship, because you said, I'm not looking for a male best friend. So I don't have a best friend outside of this relationship. We're kind of in it and we could be best friends now, fine. But if we break up, we're done. This is not a friendship. And a relationship needs to have friendship in it. But this is not a relationship of friendship only. It's a romantic relationship that has a friendship included in it, which is an amazing bonus, but I'm not okay if it's not there.
Yeah.
Good job, Sara. Way to go! With some good coaching. Good job.
One second. But can you tell us, for the feelers, I was going to say for the feelers who are listening, but let's be honest, I don't know how many feelers are listening. Because it's usually the thinkers that are seeking out this information. But for the feelers who are listening, or for the thinkers who are dating a feeler, if, like you said, it's harder for them to connect to that, do I want to take this to a relationship level? Is this the person that I want to marry? For me, using the Soulmate Clarity system that you taught me and that I now coach is what helped me get to that decision, right? Yes, I felt this amazing emotional and soul connection, but I needed the logical step-by-step, here's why it makes sense for me to marry this person.
Right.
If you don't need that, then how do you come to that decision? And how do you do it in a timely fashion?
So it's a good question. And for the feelers, So first of all, they could also use the Soulmate Clarity system. They could also follow through this, but we would follow through it on a heart and soul feeling level, right? When we're evaluating things, we're evaluating it through how we feel,
right?
When we're with them, how we feel that our values are aligned, as opposed to what we think about them being aligned. So we're not talking our head into anything. We're opening our heart to the possibility of something. Okay. And so for anybody who is in that feeler boat, you really have to be aware that you will never talk yourself into it. You will never think yourself into a relationship, because if it doesn't feel right, you'll never move ahead. You just won't. Wow. You won't, because you will operate on what you feel over what you think every time. Now,
hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
But that means that anyone who marries a feeler should be really confident in that relationship. Because if the feeler was willing and ready to marry you, that means they're in it. They felt it.
100%. They felt it. They're in it. There is no question. There is no doubt
right now.
Right. He wasn't thinking anything. He felt like it was right, so he moved ahead, and that was it. And with that, if the heart is just open, lets you in, takes you in, then you're in forever. That's it. There's no, like, you don't even need a status update. Like, even if he never says, I love you tomorrow, you know he loves you. Why? Because he feels it, because he always feels it, because I mean, he's going to tell you because he's a feeler, right? So he's going to say it also, but even if he didn't say it, it wouldn't change, because
he's there.
He's there. He got there. So what I was going to say is that there are also people who are thinkers and feelers, and they're a little more balanced, right? Like you and I are talking about what happens when you have somebody who's a strong thinker. They're a feeler also, but it's not their primary mode. And what if you have somebody who's a strong feeler, but not, as strong that they live in their head, but of course they do, right? But what happens when you have somebody who is a thinker and a feeler? Right? So which way does it go? Which way do the scales tip in terms of, does it logically make sense? And does it feel right? And which side do they lean towards? So I could tell you for myself.
Would that depend on the person they're dating?
Well, no. It does not depend on the person they're dating. It depends on the person. Okay? So it could go one of three ways. Okay? It could go that I'm both. I lean more towards the thinking side because that's my first reaction, but I very much count on my intuitive, my heart and soul feeling side, and that has to back it up. Right. It could go the reverse. I lean towards my intuitive side, but that thinking side has to back it up, right? Or you could be one of those like dead middle people where if it's not intuitively right and it doesn't feel right, you'll never get me on board. Never. And if I don't think and I can't understand why this makes sense, I'm also never going to be on board. You've got to get both sides fully on board. Neither side is going to schlep the other side along. And that is often me. Right? I made a decision to get married in a very rapid amount of time. Yeah. And it felt right. And it made sense. And I knew it. I didn't feel that it was right only. I didn't know that it was right. I felt and I knew that it was right. And you couldn't talk me out of it. That it was like such a confirmation because it was 100% on both sides. It wasn't like 100% here, 60% there. All right, I'm going to go with it, or any other combination. When you're really all in, you're really all in. It's like dead set clarity. It's like there is nothing you could tell me that it's not going to happen. And I mean, you could have told me anything and it just wouldn't have mattered. Like they're not going to pay for the wedding and nobody's going to come and you're going to just go, on a little island. It'll just be the two of you because nobody really cares because they think you're crazy and you're making a mistake. And I would have been like, okay, see you after the wedding.
Let's do this.
You're lost. No, I don't know that I would have had that chutzpah and confidence. Maybe I would have, maybe not, but I had that clarity that I would have just negotiated with everybody in the world to explain to either the people that are thinkers or the people that are feelers why this of course would make sense and why we needed to move ahead.
Wow.
Did you had three questions, I remember. I don't know if we got through all three.
This one isn't a question. Well, yeah, I'm
okay.
going to phrase it as a question.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a question that I asked you while I was dating, and I would love for you to give the unicorn story as the answer. But I asked you, I have always dated guys who are super intellectual. And I even remember my friend saying to me, maybe you need someone who's not that to balance you out. Maybe you need someone who's not that and you'll connect in a different way because you have so many friends who are intellectual. Your husband doesn't necessarily have to fill that space. And I remember responding, yeah, I know that works for other people. It's not going to work for me.
I remember that.
So once I started dating Shia, and I really appreciated the emotional connection that I did not have with anyone else before, I really wanted to know, why can't I have this with
Why
someone
not?
who's
Who's
intellectual?
bright?
Aleeza, you know
Who's
what this reminds me of?
Yeah.
December, like 3 years ago, you sent me a text in the middle of nowhere in all caps that said, I know why you're still single, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. I was like, okay, do tell. And you responded, you need someone who has a high IQ and a high EQ, and those don't exist.
I do remember that text.
You remember that?
Okay.
Yeah.
So the way that you describe it, like as the unicorn story, right? Like this mythological creature that just sounds oh so delightful and amazing. So what I asked you, which I think is the answer, is have you ever seen what you're looking for? Okay. Now, when I ask this to people, sometimes people will tell me yes, right? I'm looking for X, whatever they describe. Have you seen it? Yes. How many times have you seen it? Sometimes I hear once, sometimes I hear twice. A couple of times I've heard about up to 5 times that people have seen what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But when I ask the question, have you seen what you're looking for? And somebody tells me I have never seen it. Never. Not just in a partner, but like in other people in the world, people who are married. Do you see it elsewhere in the world? Does it exist to you? Have you seen it in any of your circles anywhere? If you're really not seeing what you're really looking for, and especially if you're not seeing it in the singles world, then maybe it's a unicorn, maybe, right? And I'm not looking to crush somebody's dreams and to say, oh, you can't get what you want, right? I'm a big believer. Figure out what you want and let's go hunt it down, and let's be a headhunter, right? A matchmaking headhunter. We're gonna find
unicorn
it, right?
hunter.
Right. We're going to be a unicornhunter.com, right? We're going to go find it and we're going to, bring it home. We're going to find it and marry it, and we're going to make it work. But if you tell me that you've never experienced it and you haven't seen it, and then I want to know, okay, so what are we looking for, and how many more years do you feel like going out to hunt for that unicorn? Because if you've seen it, then maybe what you're looking for is a little bit more in balance. But if you're looking for super high IQ, super high EQ, well put together, financially savvy, comes from an amazing family, like everything that's lined up is so perfect and wonderful, and whatever your dreams are, not to crush your dreams, but if that's what you need and you've never seen it, you've never seen it. You've never seen it. Does it exist? Does it exist? Is it out there?
And I really like
maybe.
I really like the way you explained that horses exist, and I forgot what you used.
Zebras exist.
something with a one horn.
Rhinoceroses.
Rhinoceros, maybe. We know those two exist, but have you ever seen a hybrid, right? Which would be unicorn. So we know intellectual people exist. We know emotional people exist, or people with a high IQ, people with a high EQ. Have you seen them together? But what's really interesting that I'm picking up now is you didn't ask me that question. You asked me if I ever dated someone like that.
Yeah, if you've ever dated somebody like that.
And I could tell you that I've seen people with high IQ and high EQ, specifically men, but not a lot of them. Really not a lot. So when you asked me if I dated anyone like that, or if I ever came across a single guy like that, and the answer was no.
Right.
Like, how much longer do I want to wait? And you asked me, give it a date. If you don't find your magical unicorn, by what age would you be willing to say, okay, fine.
Right.
Is it 35? Is it 40? Whatever the age is, everyone has their age that they're going to say, okay, fine, I'll just, maybe this could actually work. And then do I even want to wait till then? And who said he'll be available then?
And is that the best person for you, right? Because you're looking for this magical unicorn in your description of high IQ, high EQ, really, really super balanced, right?
Yeah.
Well, if we look at you, where are you holding? Are you super, super balanced in both of those? No, right? No. You're stronger living in your head, right? You're stronger with the IQ than the EQ. Not if this isn't a bad thing, it's just what it is. Right. And so having somebody that is the balance or the reverse of that is often that tikkun, that ability to make yourselves into better people by having the reverse available to you, and you learn from each other so much and you balance each other out. Now, it's not that you're opposites, right? You have different skills and you have different abilities. And so you draw different things out from each other, but you still have the same values, the same goals, what you want in life, and the types of family you want to build. And right. So we're still talking, we're not talking about, I don't want people to think like, oh, opposites attract. Let me go find my opposite. We're not talking about that, but we are talking about having somebody who has a different balance of IQ and EQ to who you are that will potentially be beneficial for you. Now, I want to say this, and I think that we've said this before in other webinars and things that we've done, that you want somebody who will make you a better person. And in first marriages, people often choose somebody who is less similar to who they are, right? So often they'll do what you did and they'll get that reverse. Second marriages, it's not always true. Second marriages, right, down the road, people are going to say, you know what? Forget about the EQ thing. I really was looking for it, but like, dude, I just want the IQ. I just want this thing to match me. I want that part to be easier. The other part, I'm willing to forego. I already had that the first time around. And you know what? Not for me. Now, not everybody gets divorced. So not everybody has that experience, right? And some people are thrilled like you are with the experience that you have. And it works for many, many people. But statistically speaking, what we see in the world is that in first marriages, people are choosing people that are a little bit more different and balance them out. And in second marriages, they're looking for things that are a little more similar. And so if you're in that position and you're thinking, hey, Aleeza, oh my gosh, I could never do what Sara did, right? And you're potentially second time around, it's like, oh, great, I'm totally in line with that. That's statistically really where not everybody, where people tend to hold.
I can just say, Aleeza, if I would have married someone like me, oh my gosh, I don't even want to think about it. That just sounds like a disaster in the making and a lot less fun than life could be.
Right. And you have a fun partner because it's a heart and soul partner that just makes moments really enjoyable that feel good, right? Because heart and soul people often are looking to feel good. They're not usually looking to feel bad or to make other people feel bad, right? The thinkers, we torture ourselves in our heads, right? And that's the difficult thing. I know it's a thing. My clients come to me and they're like, oh, why do I do this to myself? And I'm like, it's normal. Welcome to the crowd. Thanks for being one of my clients. It's like our typical client. So, okay. Did we cover everything? Did we get through all the nitty-gritty details of the head?
Definitely not. But I think we have enough to start with.
A good foundation
to start with. Yeah. Okay, and if anyone has any questions about head versus heart, feel free to drop it in the comments or reviews and we'll take a look and potentially answer.
And please review, subscribe, tell us what you like about what we're putting out there and how you think that this can help you and how it can help other people, because we absolutely love to interact with people online through coaching, through whatever method that you want. We want to be in touch. And we'd love to hear your success stories. So you should always be in touch with your success stories and anything that goes well, even if it's an aha moment, even if it's not an engagement or next stage, we still want to know that what we're doing and putting out there is really making a difference in your life. So thank you for joining us. Make sure to subscribe. If you need coaching, you can always find us at marriagemindedmentor.com. We would love to help you. Sara is one of our amazing coaches, and we have a whole team waiting to support you. Awesome.
All righty.
All the best. Bye.